As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and we are no longer on indictment watch. We are in indictment reality right after this. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and we are no longer on indictment watch. We are in indictment reality here in America, and this is completely unprecedented. And if you are just joining, we are covering this today, as well as, of course, looking forward to tomorrow when former President Trump has indicated that he will be flying up to Manhattan, leaving Mar-a-Lago about noon today, and then will be in the Manhattan courthouse tomorrow morning to get arraigned. And so Gregg Jarrett, who is a legal analyst on Fox News and has a new book, The Trial of the Century, that you can pre-order now at thegreggjarrett.com, joins me now to discuss. And Greg, you have a piece that is titled Trump's Indictment Rests on This Bizarre Legal Theory and Has Three Major Flaws. So let's get into the particulars of that. But first off, what do you expect from the arraignment tomorrow morning, and whether or not this infamous mugshot will be taken and distributed?
Well, the process is common and perfunctory, if you will. Trump fills out a bunch of forms. He's fingerprinted. He'll be moved to a courtroom somewhere in the 2 o'clock hour for an arraignment where the charges against him are read. And then I think, his bail has been already prearranged, probably just no bail. He's released on his own recognizance. And then he'll fly off back to Mar-a-Lago. But I think that this is more proof, Jenna, that there is no system of justice anymore. There's only a legal system, and it's corrupt. This is an abusive, vindictive indictment of Donald Trump that is based on a feeble, lame interpretation of the law. And as I wrote in the column you referenced, there are all kinds of legal obstacles that Bragg faces. Non-disclosure agreements in exchange for money are legal. Second of all, it would have to be shown that Trump himself was somehow involved in falsifying records. CEOs generally don't do that, especially of large corporations. And finally, Alvin Bragg would have to prove that Trump not only understood these complex, convoluted campaign laws that nobody really comprehends, but that he intended, by virtue of his actions, to violate them. I mean, good luck trying to prove that.
Well, Gregg Jarrett, you raise a really great point that this is a bootstrapped claim onto a manipulated law that is the action is actually outside the statute of limitations. I mean, no reasonable prosecutor under these circumstances would bring such a case, and it's obviously politically motivated. And so what do you think that Alvin Bragg's ultimate goal is here when you're seeing Donald Trump rise by double digits in the polls? You're seeing him fundraise close to $5 million. And this case likely won't be resolved unless there's some procedural dismissal at the beginning, which should happen until after the GOP primary. So, is this just about draining his war chest? Is it just, not even about the election as much as it is just an intense, crazy focus to get Donald Trump?
Well, you have to recall that Alvin Bragg, an uber progressive, ran on the campaign pledge of prosecuting Trump, which is egregiously unethical and a violation of the canons of ethics that govern prosecutors. He vowed to exploit the immense powers of his office, if elected, to bring down the former president. Never mind that he was not privy to any evidence or documents that Trump had ever violated the law, but being bereft of facts didn't deter him from publicly accusing Trump of felonious conduct. And then, of course, upon assuming office, he launched an investigation in search of a crime, which is anathema to the duty of public prosecutions. He did drop the case immediately, but then a public pressure campaign led him to reverse course, and he caved in. And he adopted this, as I say, ludicrous legal theory to fulfill his promise to voters and, to satisfy his party benefactors. But most of all, I think he wants to advance his own career. He's politically ambitious. I think he sees himself as the hero of the Democratic Party, when in fact, I think in the end, he'll be the GOAT.
Yeah, and this is so, you're describing this Gregg Jarrett. I'm sitting here thinking this is the plot of a Hollywood movie script, where you have the obvious setup of the clash between, the righteous justice and then the evil, manipulative bad guy who is trying to become the petty tyrant and weaponize the system. And yet somehow in our mainstream media, they don't see any of this clash between good and evil or even the rule of law and the Constitution and preserving any of this. This is just about their insane focus as well to get Donald Trump. And they're actually wanting to have a judge impose a gag order on Donald Trump, which, a gag order isn't totally uncommon in a criminal case, and they're put in place to ensure there's a fair trial for defendants, and that, some of these pretrial statements don't influence jurors. But I don't think you're going to find a juror in Manhattan anywhere that hasn't heard of this already. And what do you make of a judge possibly imposing this? In my view, it would be just to prevent Trump from campaigning on this, for one thing, but second, getting his view out in the court of public opinion, which, as you and I are very well aware, that forum matters to Trump, and it ultimately matters for the election just as much as the actual court of law.
Gag orders on defendants who have a right to publicly plead their innocence, those are unconstitutional. Sadly, they happen all the time. And, a lot of defendants don't challenge it because they don't have the financial wherewithal to do so. And it takes a lot of time to challenge the unconstitutionality of such gag orders. That's always an uphill battle. But look, the mainstream media, as you point out, has been cheering this on. They despise Donald Trump. They've been salivating over the possibility that, he would be convicted. They've been acting like giddy children in a candy shop. But these are the same knuckleheaded journalists who abandon all fairness and objectivity and accuracy when they falsely accused Trump of colluding with Russia. They had no credible evidence. Their sloppiness and incompetence was breathtaking. I wrote about it in 2 books, The Russia Hoax and Witch Hunt. This was a shameful act of media malpractice. They assured their viewers and readers, it's worse than Watergate. Trump is going to go to jail for being a secret Russian agent. And, of course, it all turned out to be a hoax, the greatest mass delusion in American political history. And, the media deserves a huge share of blame for that. It was media malpractice on steroids. And the scary part is they're doing it all over again.
Right. And as we're sitting here watching this, I mean, it's amazing to see how the camps already are divided and how much the mainstream media is, as you characterize it, I think rightly, Gregg Jarrett, just salivating over this potential conviction. I mean, people are literally suggesting, who are members of the mainstream media and who are clearly political opponents of Donald Trump, that they're celebrating Indictment Day. I mean, this is something that is so far beyond what the justice system was intended for, and yet some in the media are also suggesting potentially that this isn't just about the hush money to the porn star. This could be about some other things. And of course, we don't have the indictment yet. Media organizations have asked the court to release that before tomorrow so that we can all pick it apart, of course. But do you anticipate that there's any potential merit to the 30 plus charges that go beyond just this, what we've all been focusing on, which is this payment to Stormy Daniels? Is there anything possibly that could potentially be meritorious if there's something that's potentially with the Trump organization or something that we're just not aware of at the moment?
I just don't see it. This case was laughingly referred to in the Manhattan DA's office as the zombie case because it was repeatedly pronounced dead only to be brought back to life. Bragg himself killed it when he realized it was a farce. But his hatred of Trump was so consuming that he resurrected it from the grave. And to make that happen, based on the leaks of what's in the indictment, he had to contort the law and twist the facts to, jam a square peg into a legal round hole. Even some diehard liberals and notable Democrats are conceding that, these charges are lame. And they grumble that the case is transparently political, which it is. And they fret that, a failed prosecution may result in a public backlash with severe political consequences for their party, the Democratic Party. I think the real wreckage, Jenna, falls on the public's perception of our legal system, that it's no longer fair, that it's being weaponized to achieve a partisan purpose. We'll wait and see what's in the indictment itself, but if they've taken, 1 or 2 charges and multiplied them into 34 separate charges based on 34 reimbursement payments. As Jonathan Turley, the law school professor at George Washington University, said, that doesn't make it 34 times more legitimate or powerful. Increasing the quantity doesn't add to the value of a pathetically weak case.
Right. And Gregg Jarrett, what you just said, I think, is so important and underscores the future precedent problem with this type of weaponization of government is that most people now do not trust the legitimacy of law enforcement. They don't trust the system. They don't trust American justice. I mean, we used to be, and still, when it's working correctly, we have the best system of justice in the world. And certainly it's flawed, and we can talk about judicial reform. We can talk about criminal justice reform, all of those things to make it better. But when you have something like this where you have political opponents, and I see this all over social media all the time, that people are suggesting that we need to just lock up our political opponents. I mean, this is just beyond the pale of what people used to understand as the United States of America, and they weren't advocating for a system that was so illegitimate. And just the last few minutes I have with you, you have a new book out that's called The Trial of the Century. And as I was looking at this page, I thought, that could be a title that will be really a good moniker on the Trump trial if this ends up going there. So are you going to be poised to write another book if this case ends up in trial?
I don't know. The trial of the century is about the legendary Scopes monkey trial about 100 years ago. But, it's relevant now more than ever. It foreshadowed today's culture wars, the fierce debates over free speech and academic autonomy. Especially the vocal conflict we have now over critical race theory in education. This was an epic battle over evolution versus creationism, science versus religion, but most of all, free speech. And, that's what we find today so in jeopardy. And, if you're going to criminalize politics, and weaponize our system of justice for partisan gain, I think that Americans are going to react adversely to that. And I think they see that happening here in this particular case. I think it's regrettable. Bill Barr, no fan of Trump's, called the charges an abomination. Barr's an exceedingly smart guy. He knows the law more than anybody I know. And he says they're going after the man, not a crime. And, he said this case is held together by chicken wire, paper clips, and rubber bands. It's a lousy case, and I hardly agree with the former two-time attorney general.
Yeah, it's so sad that we are at this point, and it's interesting, Gregg Jarrett, that we have we're looking back 100 years in your book, The Trial of the Century, and we're all debating the very same issues. And this is why the torch of liberty and freedom has to be passed successfully from one generation to the next. So get the book, The Trial of the Century, at thegreggjarrett.com. Always appreciate Gregg Jarrett stopping by. We will be back with more on the now indictment of the former president.
During this period of record high inflation, big box stores have stayed open the whole time, while many small business owners have been forced to close. The wealthiest people in human history became wealthier, while mom and pop suffered. I don't really feel good about that. Do you? I would rather support small businesses, shop smaller, local, family-owned, and made in America. So what if a lot of us across the nation banded together and switched our shopping away from big box stores? How we spend our dollars could be our most important vote. Do those stores support freedom and American values? Is that where we should be buying the things we need for the rest of our lives? What if we just stopped giving them our money? What if we shopped with a family-owned manufacturer that believes in preserving our freedoms? Well, this is why, friends, I'm excited about PatriotsAreSwitching.com. PatriotsAreSwitching.com gives patriots the ability to walk away from the big box stores forever. Why would we expect positive change in the world when tens of millions of us do what we've always done? This is a chance for us to join together and make a huge difference. PatriotsAreSwitching.com is a movement that pledges allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. So to learn more about how to vote with your dollars, go to PatriotsAreSwitching.com.
So So we are continuing to talk about this unprecedented indictment of former President Donald Trump. And he has, of course, announced that he will be leaving for Manhattan later today at noon Eastern time and will go up to Trump Tower and then to the courthouse tomorrow in Manhattan. And my good friend Josh Hammer, who is the opinion editor at Newsweek and also a brilliant lawyer in his own right, he and I talked last week on my podcast, and you can find this on the JennaEllisShow.com, about Governor DeSantis out of Florida. Of course, President Trump is a resident of Florida, and how the governor may or may not have a constitutional role here if President Trump had decided to challenge extradition. So, of course, this is now more of a hypothetical conversation just because President Trump clearly has indicated that he is not intending to ask for a hearing in that regard. But it was interesting to me, and I wanted to bring Josh on the show this morning to talk about Governor DeSantis's response, because he actually came out and said in the wake of the announcement that the indictment was actually filed that Florida will not assist in an extradition. So, Josh Hammer, this to me was very interesting, and as you and I had discussed last week, this was a little bit more than what Governor DeSantis had initially pledged in terms of his role. And so what does this tell you when the Florida governor is actually saying that and pledging his government to not assist if there had been a need for an extradition request?
So, Jenna, great to chat with you as always. So, as we discussed on your podcast, as you mentioned, there is relevant Supreme Court precedent here. There's specifically there's a late 1980s case called Puerto Rico versus Branstad, which basically says that discretion is extremely limited when it comes to state governments, to state governors, to get in the middle of extraditions from one state to another, and ultimately that Article 4, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution, the extradition clause, which deals with interstate extraditions, the court held in the Branstad case that ultimately this is enforceable judicially via a writ of mandamus if necessary, which is basically legalese for saying that the court can effectively force the governor's hand. So my reading of that was and continues to be that the governor's constitutional role is very limited. Now, like you, it seems like when I first heard Governor DeSantis' tweet last Thursday in the aftermath of this appalling and unprecedented indictment from the Soros-funded prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, my initial reaction was, this is interesting. But then I started to I actually went back and watched what Governor DeSantis initially said, and I don't think there's any discrepancy, actually. So if you look very carefully at what he said the first time versus what he said in the tweet on Thursday, the first time he said Florida will not, or he said, we're not going to, quote, get involved. So the question then, and this is just like a lawyerly thing to parse words like this, but the question is there a difference between to get involved versus the wording of the tweet, which is to assist? And I think there's probably not. I mean, it's a different kind of emphasis. It's a different mode of rhetorical emphasis on the one hand to say you will not get involved versus you will not assist or affirmatively assist. But it's really saying the same thing. I mean, if I'm reading the governor correctly, he's basically saying we're not going to get involved here. I mean, maybe we'll kind of delay or maybe hypothetically speaking, because Trump's obviously going to surrender himself. So maybe hypothetically speaking, we would have kind of gummed up the works a little bit and kind of delayed administratively the signing of the paper. But Governor DeSantis is a very smart man. He knows that according to the text of the Constitution and according to the Supreme Court case, Puerto Rico versus Branstad, if this really were to be litigated, then a federal court could force his hand. So that's my basic take on the situation.
And I think, Josh Hammer, that you're correct on that Governor DeSantis just said more particularly in his tweet what he had already said that audibly in response to a reporter's question. And I know that there was a lot of parsing of that, and there was more emphasis on his kind of snarky comment about, well, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star, which, it is true. I'm sure that, he doesn't have some of these same issues that that President Trump does in his past. But nonetheless, there was a lot more focus on the politics around that and the optics of that than what he actually said relevant to extradition. So interestingly, though, when he is saying that Florida won't assist, and again, President Trump has said he's going up there. So this is just more of an exercise in, I think, what is an interesting question, not just legally, but also politically. Our friend Will Chamberlain, who is also another great attorney, he tweeted this: "Why isn't Trump refusing to surrender? Ron DeSantis has made clear he will protect him from extradition. Time to fight." And a lot of people, myself included, asked that question. Why not, when you have the governor on your side, why wouldn't President Trump try to fight this on all levels? And even if this is as perfunctory as a federal judge signing a writ of mandamus and saying, okay, well, we're going through the motions. Why not force going through the motions in case there is some other way that DeSantis may be looking at this legally? And why not make the Manhattan DA go through all of the motions instead of just going up there and saying, okay, sure, fine, I'm here to meet the man and respond?
Yeah, so I don't have a good answer to that question, Jenna. I share your instinct. I thought Will Chamberlain's tweet was basically spot on. Trump can't necessarily have it both ways here. I mean, if you think back to his initial Truth Social post a couple weekends ago, I think it was over a Saturday, where he said, in all caps, he was kind of raging, like I heard that they're going to indict the former president. If you think about what his quick reaction was himself, as well as the reaction of some of his closest surrogates, it was actually very little about the indictment, and very, very quickly the attention shifted to, what is Ron DeSantis going to do? I mean that switch from kind of a coordinated social media and surrogacy perspective happened very, very quickly. And, the governor now has done exactly what I think Donald Trump, at least on paper, would have wanted him to do. So that does raise the obvious question as to, why are you not going to play along with this? Why are you not going to string this out? I mean, it does call into question, I think, to put it mildly, the earnestness or the seriousness with which Trump and some of his closest surrogates were purporting to criticize Governor DeSantis for his allegedly lackluster response to the news of the indictment, which I kind of thought was perfectly fine and deliberate all along. But the reality of what's going on here, from my perspective at least, and I'm probably the only one who has this take, is I think President Trump on a certain level wants to get indicted. I mean, look at the fundraising numbers, Jenna. Look at how much money the Donald Trump 2024 campaign has been able to pull on the news of this indictment. I think $4 million, right, just over like a 48-hour period after the news broke this past Thursday or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact hour frame, but it's a fundraising boondoggle. And I'm sure that on the one hand, the idea of having to appear in court, the idea of a mugshot, I mean, that's terrifying for any human being, obviously. And just to reiterate, this is an absolutely disgraceful, legally baseless, and abhorrent abuse of prosecutorial power from a Manhattan County prosecutor who never, ever prosecutes violent crime, homicides, gun crime, gun trafficking. It's all dramatically on the rise in New York County, New York, but they're choosing to expend the prosecutorial resources on this. It is an utter farce and travesty of justice. But having said that, it clearly is, from a pure fundraising perspective, good for the Trump campaign. I think a lot of folks are of the opinion, perhaps not wrongly, that this will help Donald Trump secure his grip on power in the Republican primary, at least in the short term. It's not obvious to me that this helps him in the mid to long term, but at least in the short term, it probably will help him kind of consolidate power in the 2024 primary. So to me, that's why he's not going to kind of force Alvin Bragg's or a federal court's hands here. I think it's really more about the fundraising and the politics of it. But it does call into seriousness the earnestness with which he and his surrogates purport to criticize DeSantis, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I'm talking with Josh Hammer, who's the opinion editor at Newsweek, and and you also have the Josh Hammer Show, which is an excellent podcast that I highly recommend as well. And, Josh, as you and I have talked about this as well, offline, I mean, the the focus of Trump when everybody around him, including Ron DeSantis, is so focused on the weaponization of government and how this is such an unprecedented, ridiculous indictment. And I echo all of your comments on how heinously abusive this is of the system, all of that. I think it was surprising. I mean, not really surprising for those of us who have followed Trump and know him, for over the last 7 years. But I think it was surprising a little bit to see that his initial immediate focus was on his political opposition or the guy that he thinks is going to be his primary top rival, instead of coalescing the country and specifically the Republican base around this kind of sham proceeding. And so what do you think is going to be the more long-term political aftermath of this? Because right now he has the bump in the polls that may or may not just be kind of that artificial bump as people are reacting to this. And I think rightly people are outraged about it. And so they're wanting to support him in pushing back against the weaponization of government. But we still have a lot of time before the Republican primary. And do you see this kind of tenor of being so myopically focused on the politics of it instead of the rest of the principled approach, I suppose, would be one way to contrast it. Do you see that ultimately being helpful for the campaign, or do you see that actually playing into some of the other campaigns' favor, whether that's Ron DeSantis or someone else?
So I definitely think that the short-term effect to help Trump consolidate power, the so-called rally around the flag effect, I definitely think in the short term that is very real. And I thought it was very real in the aftermath of the raid at Mar-a-Lago last August, which I also profusely criticized at the time. My column that I wrote after that raid was just utterly lambasting the FBI. I titled that column American Stasi, with the Stasi being the infamous East German secret police. So I was harshly critical of that as well. But from a political perspective, I mean, the natural effect of things like the Mar-a-Lago raid, of things like this unprecedented crossing of the Rubicon, a point from which we can never turn back, of indicting a former president, yeah, these naturally will, at least in the short term, help Trump's fundraising numbers, help him get, bigger and better rallies in Waco or wherever the next rally may be, and all of that. But it is not at all obvious to me that that same salutary effect will carry over for the mid to long term. As you very accurately note, it's April 2022. The Iowa caucuses are about 10 months away. There is a lot of time, and we're talking a lot about Governor DeSantis. I mean, there's so much time until the Iowa caucuses that Governor DeSantis has obviously not even announced that he's running yet. And there's a small chance he doesn't. I happen to think he probably will. But there's obviously a small chance he doesn't. So there's so much time left. And one possible effect that the Alvin Bragg indictment might have is it might persuade some of these other rogue prosecutors in Georgia or in Washington, D.C., to potentially indict President Trump as well. So, he's under potential criminal investigation in multiple jurisdictions. But none of these, from my perspective, have legal merit to them. They are all dubious of one layer or another. Ironically, the Alvin Bragg prosecution in New York is probably the single most dubious of them. It is the single most farcical and baseless. But there's the situation in Georgia where Trump, after the election, was calling Brad Raffensperger. There's been a longstanding kind of investigation there. There's Washington, D.C. When it comes to all the January 6th committee, we're still waiting to hear what Merrick Garland and the DOJ do with that. And then, of course, there's the classified document situation about the Mar-a-Lago raid that I just mentioned. So there's a lot of potential criminal activity. Again, from my perspective, all of these cases are legally dubious, but the natural effect of Bragg kind of being the first out of the gate to indict a former president and setting that wretched precedent from which we will never go back does have the natural effect potentially of getting these other prosecutors there. And at that point, Jenny, you kind of have to ask yourself, if you are kind of torn between multiple candidates, let's say it's like December, January. It's the lead up to Iowa. It's the lead up to New Hampshire. I mean, do you really want to roll the dice with someone at that point who was potentially under 2 or 3 criminal indictments? I mean, unless you're like a really, 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 really hardcore Trump supporter, if you're even kind of remotely considering your other options, I think it's pretty easily foreseeable at that hypothetical future point where someone might want to choose a different path forward.
Yeah, and I think that that breaks it down really well, Josh Hammer. And there are so many variables that we still have to contemplate heading into the 2024 primary. And so, this isn't done yet. And like you, I think that Ron DeSantis will jump in. I think he should jump in. How that plays out, well, we'll have to continue to wait and see. But thanks so much. So that's Josh Hammer. You can follow him at Josh_Hammer on Twitter. He's the opinion editor of Newsweek. We'll be back tomorrow ahead of the Manhattan indictment and the arraignment. So we'll be with you tomorrow.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
Have you ever picked up a towel set because it felt so soft in the store, but then when you leave and you go to use it, it's not really that absorbent? It's basically a towel that is leaving you out to dry. That's why MyPillow has developed the MyPillow towels that actually work. I know, it's totally mind-blowing. Towels that actually dry you. Their 6-piece towel set includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. I have the sage green and the white. I love them. And right now you can receive a 6-piece set for only $39.98 with promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. So go to mypillow.com right now and click on the radio listeners special. MyPillow products come with a 10-year warranty and have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So to receive this amazing offer on the 6-piece towel set of MyPillow towels, just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, and enter promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475. That's mypillow.com, promo code Jenna.